God's so good, isn't he? He's so powerful. The precious anointing, you know, you're not in your permanent dwelling place right now, but the precious anointing here remains. The same as it was in your other building. That anointing is here, and he is here. You know, what just excites me so much is the peace that I see in Pastor. You know, Pastor Jack you know, you're in a season of change, right? You're in a season of transition. And sometimes seasons can get underneath your skin sometimes when it's change. You know, some of us don't like a lot of change, right? Some of us do. Some of us like something new all the time. But some of us get into a habit of being in one stream, and change can be hard. But as your pastor's leading you through this transition, he's leading you with the peace of God, because he knows what is coming. You know what he was saying earlier about your breaking out? You truly are. This is the pathway to greatness. Don't, you know, think about it in those terms. This is your pathway to greatness as you're waiting upon the Lord for the perfect place where he wants you. And he's going to strengthen you. And don't let a season that you're not sure about whens and wheres and hows and whys and all, you know, we always want those answers. You know, we always want answers to things that we don't really need answers to when we trust God, right? When we just say, we're going to trust him and we know where he's going to take us. He's going to take us to the perfect spot for this body. And this body will excel when you get there. Not that you're not excelling now, but you're in that transition period. And that transition period can be a little strange at times. So don't allow it to throw you off track in any way. Understand, this is your pathway to greatness. This is your pathway to where you were intended to be long ago. Because God's had a plan for this all along. He wasn't surprised by any of this. He's had a plan for you guys all along. And it's for greatness.
She's going to read out Genesis chapter 9, verse 8 through 17, which is the passage the Lord has given me as a foundation. Where it goes from there, I'm not real sure. But we'll see.
Can you turn your mic up or no?
This is turned
Down.
out. There you go.
Is that better?
Yes.
All right.
Genesis 9, 8 through 17 says, Then God told Noah and his sons, I hereby confirm my covenant with you and your descendants, and with all the animals that were on the boat with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, every living creature on earth. Yes, I am confirming my covenant with you. Never again will floodwaters kill all living creatures. Never again will a flood destroy the earth. Then God said, I am giving you a sign of my covenant with you and with all living creatures for all generations to come. I have placed my rainbow in the clouds. It is a sign of my covenant with you and with all the earth. When I send clouds over the earth, the rainbow will appear in the clouds. And I will remember my covenant with you and all living creatures. Never again will the floodwaters destroy all life. When I see the rainbow in the clouds, I will remember the eternal covenant between God and every living creature on earth. Then God said to Noah, yes, this rainbow is a sign of the covenant I am confirming with all the creatures on earth.
You know, but what we read in that passage is really the beginning of covenant from God to us. And God never changes. To God, covenant is irreversible, it's irretractable, it's never ending. And that's the way it should be with us. Yeah.
You know, in the covenant, the rainbow, what has the world done with the rainbow?
Yeah.
They've tried to pervert it, haven't they?
Yes.
They've tried, but they can't, because it's a covenant of God. You know, every time I see a rainbow, I'm excited, because it's an image of the things of God to us. And we have to remember that the world will try to pervert our covenant. It will try to break our covenant, get us to break our covenant. It will try to get us to look at other things instead of what we should be looking at. It will try to get us off track because we're in a season of transition, right? But the enemy can't do that because God says the covenant will stay. It says, this is the sign of the covenant I am confirming with all the creatures on earth. God himself confirmed it. He confirmed it, and he will continue to confirm it. He will continue to confirm your covenant as long as you stay faithful. You need to stay faithful to the covenant that you've developed here. The covenant between you and your pastor, the covenant between you and each other, the covenants between you and God, to serve him where he's called you to serve, right? So it's an important thing, but like I said, the enemy tries to pervert it, doesn't he?
Because covenant's a forever deal. When we got married 52 years ago, we celebrated that this month. It was a covenant we made between the two of us, and it was a covenant made for everlasting. And sometimes it doesn't happen. I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But there was times in that 52 years that it almost blew up on us.
He almost blew it up.
But okay, I'll take the blame. So let me explain that to you. We weren't saved, and I was just got out of the Army. It was a very successful business. I was out. We were married about 6 years. We had 2 little kids, and Mindy was getting ready to be 1 year old that week to celebrate her first birthday. And Debbie was always tired. I called up and say, "Hey, they're having a party at my boss's house. Take the kids over to your mom and dad's and meet me over at Rogers." She said, "No, you go ahead. I'm too tired." And I got to the point, I was so mad. She's always tired anyway. What is she tired for? She had a 3-year-old and 1-year-old. And she had a right to be tired, right? But the enemy tried to pull me away from her, someone that I had pursued. I chased. I chased her.
You chased me, yeah.
In high school, and it's like, well, that's who I wanted. I knew that's who I was supposed to be my wife. But the enemy tried to trick me, and we almost lost it. I even threw an extra curve in and said, "I want your best friend. I want a divorce, and I want your best friend." And luckily, she was a best friend. Never really, she sort of kept me tagging along, but by the end of the week, I was back home with Deb. And Debbie forgave me. That's the covenant that was in her towards our relationship. See, it's supposed to be a forever deal. And someone who really understands covenant, it's even tough to leave a job sometimes, to leave a position, because you're in covenant when you go to work there, but yet, all of a sudden God's calling you somewhere else, or you feel like this is not the place for me anymore. No, other situations. But the thing, I guess I was after there is a lot of times in situations like this, it's going to prove your covenant. It's going to prove your covenant to where God called you, to the man and woman of God that God placed you with. And that's the important part of it, is you have to realize what covenant really is and what's been invested in you. Deb and I stayed on the way back from Florida this past few days. We stayed at a couple of Army posts because we found it was a little bit cheaper as a veteran to stay at these hotels at the Army bases than it was out on the streets. But the first day we were there in Fort Knox, we went down for breakfast, and there's this whole room full of soldiers and majors and sergeants and all this kind of stuff. And it reminded me as a veteran, and some of you are veterans in here, you'll be reminded of this, that there was a covenant that was built in you in the military, that you were there because of this guy. You may never see them again, but you're still in covenant with them. The rest of the times I have a guy who's in basic training with, and I'm still connected to. We still talk, we still see each other via internet, things like that. But it reminded me of the covenant the Army built into, the military built into us. Like I said, sitting there watching the soldiers at breakfast, understanding they may have not seen each other. May have been, Debbie said, well, how do they know everybody? Well, they may have been in basic training together. They may have been assigned to a unit over here 5 or 6 years ago, and all of a sudden they see each other again. That all is restored, just like it was at that time. And so I was reminded of the covenant they taught us. In the Army, or the military, it said, the oath of enlistment for the military says this: I, in the same your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, of foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to the regulations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. And many veterans will tell you that was a covenant made to the country, to the military, that's never ending. It's always there. It stays with you. I don't think about it a lot, but I also really believe I even have a t-shirt now that says that in the back, that's a forever covenant between me and what I chose to do as a young man. There's an officer's, I'm not going to read the officer's one, it's a little bit the same, but like the president and other congressmen and everybody that gets sworn in to lead our country, they say something similar to that they're going to defend our country, they're going to do the right things, and they're saying a covenant vow to us as a people. Now, unfortunately, go ahead.
I think it's important, even as Christians, sometimes we see something like that and we don't think too much about that. But that's how important the covenant should be. We should have we should make a covenant statement about where we go to church at. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend this body. I will support and defend this body, and that includes everyone in this body and the pastor in this body, right? Against all enemies, foreign and domestic, against the enemies that we know that we come up against, right? This wiles of this enemy. We're not food, we're not, unknowing of what he can do.
Let me interrupt you real quick. We in America have lived a blessed life as Christians. We've not had the tribulation that a lot of foreign countries have, where they had to hide in basements, they couldn't have Bibles. One person may have page 32 out of Romans, the other has page 33 out of Romans, and they bring it together and they get a whole Bible. We've not had that here in this country. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but the potential is always there. But in order for us to survive that attack, we have to understand our covenant. We have to understand what we're made covenant with and who we're in covenant with. It's important that Pastor Jack and I are really more like brothers than, even though he has horrible picks in football, teams and things like that. But the thing is that we've grown so close together. And what's funny is, I didn't know him that well when the church was downtown in Georgetown, and he's taking me back in my car had broken down clear across country Kentucky. He's taking me back one night. We're on this country road going back, and he said, "Well, who do you like for football?" I said, "Well, I like Notre Dame and anybody playing Tennessee." He puts on the pad. He goes, "What are you doing, Jack? What are you doing?" He says, "I'm letting this guy out." But the thing is, we have this conversation. But we have a strong covenant with one another, and we have both had issues at different times, and we're there for each other, And he drove to Alabama the last time I was in the hospital down there to see me because he heard that might be happening open heart surgery. It didn't happen, but when I looked up and he's there, that's that covenant bond we have with one another, even though he doesn't know good football teams. The thing is that as we look at this, we have to understand that no matter what comes our way, understand our covenant bond to one another. Go ahead.
That we will defend it, that we will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, to this body, to the things of God. Sometimes we get so caught up in what's happening around us that we forget that this is truly something that we should think about on a daily basis. Our allegiance, our covenant with this body, especially as you're going through a transition time. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear the faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the word. It says the orders of the president. We have to obey the orders of the word. Obey the directions that the word gives us through times like this. Obey those words. And the orders of the officers, the pastor appointed over us, right? According to the regulations and the uniform code of military adjustment, according to the regulations and uniform code of God, right? We answer to a much higher power than even that. And that oath is taken very seriously by servicemen, right? And women. It's taken very serious. We should take our oath to this covenant, to this body, to your calling. Your calling, I want to say it right. Your calling depends on you being in the right place at the right time where you're supposed to be too. For your calling to really come forth in the most powerful manner that God intended it to. For you to be where you're supposed to be. That's a powerful thing, isn't it? That's where God has decided that this is your path. And on this path, there is many amazing things coming. You're breaking out, like Pastor Jack said at the very beginning. You're breaking out into the most amazing times of all of your lives, not just one of you singly. This body is preparing to step into things that it hadn't really been stepping into before. Not that you've been doing anything wrong, but I believe there's such a thing coming that you're going to see more and more and more of what God has intended for you all along, and there's going to be such a freedom in each one of you that your gifts are going to flow. They're going to flow like they have never flown before. Flown before? Yeah, I guess they can fly, right? But they're going to flow like you have never experienced before because you're going through this time as covenant people.
when you understand, and I know you probably do, so really preach into the choir here about covenant, because you have you've been taught over the years so many good things about covenant.
And he really was kind of struggling with that. He says, I feel like I'm supposed to be teaching about covenant at Pastor Jack's, you know. It's like,
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the thing is, covenant, if you watch, if you understand what covenant really truly means, we're going to talk about that in a minute, you'll see things out in the public, that's covenant, that's a covenant thing. That's covenant going on there. You know, I think military and motorcycle organizations understand covenant. People that ride motorcycles a lot, and people ride in groups of motorcycles, whether it be Hell's Angels or anybody else, they're in covenant with one another. They may be tough guys out, but they're really with one another. They're in covenant. You don't do things to the one without taking on the rest. I don't mean to be talking as far as fighting stuff, but you got to watch yourself when you're coming against somebody. Unfortunately, the church isn't like that as a rule, but the church hasn't been taught covenant as a rule, and it's so important. You guys are blessed because you've been taught so excellent in covenant that you're head and shoulders above a lot of the other people in churches because they don't understand the word. You know, one thing about understanding covenant is it doesn't mean you are or truly understand the responsibility of a true meaning is, wait a minute, let me read this correctly. I was writing this in a coffee house. When I want to go write my messages, a lot of times, my introductions, I go to coffee houses. I have a favorite one in Frankfurt. It's right downtown. I love going there when I'm working on a message, and it's a bookstore right next door. I just love it. I go to just these off-the-wall coffee houses. The only one I could do at Fort Knox was right at the PX. But I like the commotion doesn't bother me. But so it's like I'm writing this out. It says, first, just saying you are in covenant doesn't mean that you truly understand the responsibilities or the true meaning of it. And that's like people say, well, I'm saved. Well, tell me about being saved. What does saved mean? Well, I love the Lord. Well, tell me about loving the Lord. What does that really mean? You know, tell me about, you know, so you have to, and like anything else, sometimes we say things, I forgive you. I say, oh, I forgive you. So you feel good, and I walk away, and she does something again that makes me mad, and I jump right back to that unforgiveness. So that's not forgiving her. Or I'm waiting for her to mess up again. That's not forgiving her. Until you really understand what the word is you're saying, and covenant's one of those, you can fall right off the edge from it. You know, the second thing is, I know that this church, as I said, has been taught covenant. And that's what I love about coming here. That's why I guess I feel so connected here, is because I know you guys understand covenant. And an example, marriage is a covenant agreement. We talked about that a minute ago. There's so many marriages in the church, even in the church. More than 50% of people in the church are breaking the covenant and leaving one another. Now, if you have been married and divorced, I'm not picking on you, please understand that. I don't know who has or who hasn't, it doesn't matter to me. But the deal is they don't understand the covenant and the agreement that they went into. When you get married, you say, a lot of times you say these in the old wedding vows, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, sickness and health. Now, a lot of faith churches don't add any of that negative part. Well, I do. And if Pastor Jack doesn't, that's okay, I don't care. I do. Why? Because I know as a counselor, marriage counselor, be the way ebbs and tides of a marriage. I know what it was like in our marriage. You have to go through the bad times to get to the good times sometimes. You have to build a relationship, that covenant of agreement, by going through those tough times one with another. And it doesn't mean you have to fail just because they say that. I have done so many marriage counseling things that when God speaks to a couple to stay, now one of the things that's toughest in marriage is if you lose a child in a marriage. I think it's the stat, I may be wrong, maybe up a little bit, is around the 90% of marriages that lose a child will end up divorced. Why? I don't know. Other than that one, I do know one couple I worked with that did end up divorced because she was stuck in this vein of the child that she had lost. The husband wanted to move on, and he couldn't do that with her, he felt. Now, he could have if he had just dug in and stayed with her. But covenant means staying strong when things get tough. Moving out of a building you've been in, 18 years? 17 years? And having to use somebody else's property and change your times when when you're having your service. That can be tough at times. The good part is you people are, you as a church,
You people.
use guys, yeah. Use guys, that sounds better, saying. The thing is that because of the covenant understanding that you do have and have been taught, you're going to hang through this. You're not going to lose people because of this temporary change of venue. Covenant means standing your ground. It means standing strong. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let anything happen in our relationship because when I do something wrong, I'm going to say, I'm sorry. I hope she forgives me. She has.
Numerous times.
Thousands of times. Millions of times in 52 years, I'm sure. The thing is that you stand your ground. So I'm not leaving. One thing we did years ago, I don't know how many years ago we did it, we separated, we took the word divorce out of our vocabulary. So what that did for us is that we were going to make it through, no matter if we didn't talk for a couple of days. That didn't happen very often, I'm just saying, but whatever it was going to take to get through it, we got through it. Why? We had a covenant agreement one with another. Covenant means keeping your commitment even when weakness can be seen on the other side. In other words, even if she sees that I'm waning in my ability to stay strong with us, she's going to stay there. She's going to stay strong. She's not going to move. This is what she's going to do. And a lot of times it just takes one. You can't solve a problem when both of you are angry at the same time. You have to, okay, she's mad. I'm going to listen to what she's saying. She's probably wrong, but I'm going to listen to it.
I'm usually right.
If you let me finish, I said that. You're usually right. The thing is that I'm gonna listen to what she says and I'm not gonna try most of the time to defend against what she's saying. Now
Yeah. That was fun, wasn't it?
Now the natural thing is you're not listening to them.
Yeah,
You're not. Well, didn't I say most of the time? Yeah. So I gave myself an opportunity to be wrong. So,
but the same in a covenant relationship with others, you know.
Yes.
Even if somebody screws up and says something they shouldn't say, or if they start getting discouraged about something, you know, that's what, you know, when one is strong or when one is struggling, the other one has to be strong. That's when you have to be strong for one another and strong through those things and looking and lifting up one another before the Lord for strength, you know. Always keeping in mind that this is a spiritual thing. This is your transition to greater things. You're on that pathway to something great. And sometimes along that pathway, things can get a little tough, but you have to be sure that you're carrying everybody along in the covenant with you. Everybody in this body, carrying them along in the covenant with you to get to where you're going. Because you all want to get there together because you've been called together. You've been called together to go there, to do that breaking out, to understand God's calling in your life in an even more powerful way than you ever have before. I just keep seeing the gifts. You know, as I'm even standing here looking, I'm seeing the gifts in each one of you manifesting in ways that you haven't experienced yet. Because that's where you're headed. That's where you're headed, into this new place. You're headed into perfection in every aspect of your lives individually and your lives as a covenant group.
You know, God is our example in how He wants us to live. He wants us to forgive people like He forgives. He wants us to be in covenant like He's in covenant. Think about Him and King David. David was called out. God called him out personally, and David went along doing really well, and then all of a sudden, Bathsheba. Oops. That's big hoops, isn't it? And so after Bathsheba, it was a chain of events for David. Then he calls her husband in to get out of the war so he could make sure that she could be pregnant by him instead of David. And all of a sudden that didn't happen, so he tells his captains to send him out first and then back off. And basically David killed him. He didn't physically do it, but he set up to kill. He set up to hit. And so he goes along real well. That's out of the way. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And all of a sudden, the prophet comes. And he tells David about a man that had all these thousands of sheep, and he had a neighbor that had one. But he stole the one. And David said, well, get that guy. And that bony figure, that prophet said, you're that man. And David broke. he broke. Think about that. All of a sudden, boom, he hit his knees. And Psalm 51 is all based around what happened after that event. But listen to this. Look at the epitaph on David's life. What does it say? A man after God's own heart. God knew David. He knew every bit of him. But his covenant with David was so strong that that incident was not going to separate the two when David repented of it. Think of the friendships we've lost over the years, maybe since we became saved. Because one thing or another, I have a friend, I still have a friend. But for a while, I have one friend. But this friend and I, we served under the same pastor for a short time, and it disrupted our friendship for years, really. And recently, we've gotten back together. But I kept trying to draw him back into my life. He's a pastor also. And finally, about 3 years ago, it's back. And it's even stronger than it ever was before. Because I believe in covenant so strongly that I don't want enemies. I tried to make one out of Pastor Jack, but it hasn't worked anymore. I have to know him. But the thing is that I don't want enemies. I don't want people angry with me, and I don't want to be angry with people. And that's what God is like. He doesn't want people angry at him. He doesn't want to be angry with anybody. God loves everybody. He loves the foulest person out on the streets tonight. And we have to be in covenant with God to reach out to those type of people also. The thing is that we have to be careful. And like I said, David screwed up bad, but God still loved him. God wanted him back in covenant with him. And when he came back, God said, that's a man after my own heart. I want to read 2 Corinthians chapter 3.
Verse 4 through 6, it says, "We are confident of all this because of our great trust in God through Christ. It is not that we think we are qualified to do anything on our own. Our qualification comes from God. He has enabled us to be ministers of his new covenant. This is a covenant not of written laws, but of the Spirit. The old written covenant ends in death, but under the new covenant, the Spirit gives life."
3:12 through 18.
Okay, 2 Corinthians 3:12 through 18 says, "Since this new way gives us such confidence, we can be very bold. We are not like Moses, who put a veil over his face so the people of Israel would not see the glory, even though it was destined to fade away. But the people's minds were hardened, and to this day, whenever the old covenant is being read, the same veil covers their minds so that they cannot understand the truth. And this veil can be removed only by believing in Christ. Yes, even today when they read Moses' writings, their hearts are covered with that veil, and they do not understand. But whenever someone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. For this Lord is the Spirit, and wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom." We sung that song. We're free. So all of us who have that veil removed can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. That's what you reflect. Whoops.
I'm sorry.
Moved it from where I was
I'm
reading.
sorry.
So all of us who had that veil removed can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. The glory of the Lord is just going to glow on each one of you stronger and stronger and stronger. And the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like him as we are changed into his glorious image.
Covenant also means faithfulness. Just like you're here tonight on a Tuesday night in this building, not your building, somebody else's. It means, what does it mean to be faithful? Faithful means steadfastness. I'm strong, I'm steadfast to the vision of Pastor Jack and Patty. I know that they're going to lead us down the right way. I know they're going to follow what the Lord wants. Faithfulness also means staying focused. Not only do they have to be focused, but you've got to be focused. You can't lose the focus of the vision that he had over across town, or the vision that he had when he first came into Georgetown. It doesn't matter where God moves you, you have to be steadfast to that lead of your pastor. Faithfulness also means staying the course no matter the obstacles. Some would view this as an obstacle. This is a blessing, being able to be here. This is a blessing to have the type of cooperation of another church that allows you to be using their building. It also being faithful also through the tough things. Again, faithfulness is this small world with a huge meaning. And faithfulness is all part of covenant. Staying faithful in marriage means that some in marriage seems to have lost ground with some people. We talked about it a minute ago, so I'm going to get into it. Most marriages that I dealt with in counseling, the 25-year mark was the toughest one. Why? Because the scene had changed. All the kids are gone. It's just the two of you, and if you don't remember to take care of yourself way back here as you're growing in the marriage, you look at each other and go, "Who are you?" You know, and they fail. You know, one of the things that God told us years ago, had gone to Tulsa to a ministry conference, and I'd actually gone to see some people get ordained. And the pastor at the time of that church called all the pastors up to lay hands on them, to give a word. And I'm standing there. He didn't know me, and the only reason he knew my name is because I had a name tag that said Pastor Bob Martin. He stands up in front of me. He says, "Pastor Bob, here's what he gave me. Is that church as usual for your church, Pastor Bob? You're training Green Berets. Navy SEALs, Green Berets are operating as a squad level usually. Not more than about 6 or 7 of them at a time. The thing is that resonated within me. He says it's not church as usual. You're training up people to do a deeper, harder work." And Pastor Jack says one of the things we do in Illinois is we're raising up leaders. We're raising up men and women of God to do the work of the ministry. We could be gone for the whole month because we've trained up people to do whatever we're doing and doing it at a greater level. My theme at our church is I want my ceiling to be their floor. I want them to be ahead of where I'm at. For a while it was tough when we started. I said that all those years, but when it started happening, it was tough for me. Because it's like, well, wait a minute, they're not quoting me. They'll quote Pastor Jack, and I just said that 2 weeks ago, you know. Or whatever. It's like but I realize now that what we're doing and the calling we have on our ministry is to train that next generation of leaders. The word says, what changed me was, the word says this, is that it's my job as a pastor to teach the people to do the work of the ministry. And I've been in positions in churches before where they hired me to do all the work of the ministry, all of what they consider ministry. Well, now the thing is that I have got people trained to do the work of the ministry. You know, in the military, going back to the military, there's what's called general orders. And I was going to read a couple of them for you. To take charge of the post at all government property, in my view. I can remember walking guard during basic training around the PX. It's a post exchange. It's like Walmart. It says, walk my post in a military manner, keeping always an alert and observing everything that takes place within the sight or my sight or hearing, to report all violations of those orders to someone that's above me. But we have general orders also in the church, or we should have, and I believe they're all there. The general orders to the believers, you and I. And it takes us falling into covenant with those general orders and saying, I'm going to do that. I'm going to walk by post. I'm going to do what I need to do to train others. I don't care who you are. You have others that you can train. John, right? How long have you been a believer? How long have you been a believer? Long time. Okay, we'll say with long time. That is a long year, 60 years. See, along that 60-year process, John has had a chance to train others along the way, and he may not have known he's been doing it. You may not know you're training somebody else, but when you walk in the covenant of God, he's going to open up doors for you to do different things, and all of a sudden somebody's going to go and say, I want to be just like John. I want to walk just like he does. I want to live the Lord just like he does. And that's all part of that covenant facet that you and I live in. You know, it's important for, like me, and I say this because I do. I look at Pastor Jack, and don't tell him this, okay? I admire him. I want to be like Pastor Jack. You remember that commercial, Be Like Mike?
He'll eat anything. That's true. Oh, Pastor Jack. Always be like Mike. He'll eat anything.
He'll eat anything. But the thing is there are things that I do in ministry that I realize that maybe we're parallel, but I look at him and say, okay, well, he's got a little bit of a different point of view on that. He's got a little bit different way to look at it, and I want to say, okay, that looks like a good way to go, so I'm going to follow that. want to follow. Why? Pastor Jim used to say, Pastor Cal, people would say to him, well, you're just following a man. Yeah, I'm following a man. Because that man's going where I want to go. And that's that covenant aspect of a walk as a Christian. And each one of us have to have that understanding that God placed us in a body of believers for a reason. You just didn't happen here one day. You might have thought like, well, we'll just try a church, and we end up at the Grace Fellowship of Georgetown. I think I almost said Frankfurt, I almost said a couple other places. But you know, if you were living in Illinois, I'd expect you in Groveland, because every road leads to Groveland. The thing is that God placed you here. He placed you here with a covenant mindset saying, we're going to do a great work together. Because it's not just one person that does the great work, it's togetherness. David did great things because of his mighty men that were with him. One of my favorite ones is Benai. Benai was one that jumped into a hole with a lion on a snowy day and killed the lion. He was a great man of God, and he had a covenant with David then. And when you do that, when you come alongside of somebody like a Pastor Jack or a Pastor Jim or even a Pastor Bob, you're doing that because God's called you there. We had somebody one time just recently in our church, and I can't tell you why it happened. He recently went to heaven, but they were doing along. I was giving him an opportunity to preach this, that, and the other, said this things he had done before, and he preached a sermon on the love boat in his illustration, and throughout the little at the end. It was a fun sermon. It was a Wednesday night or Thursday night, and the thing is that all of a sudden one day they quit coming. And I thought, what happened? Why are they gone? What's going on? And I use this term, I don't chase people when they leave the church. Because if they don't want to be here, that's fine. But he was different. I wanted to, well, what happened? Why is he not here? And I finally got a hold of him. He finally answered my call. I said, well, God, I've been praying for God to release me from Grace Fellowship, and he finally did. I thought, why? He never gave me the reason why, and I didn't ask. Okay, well, that's what he wanted. That was his heart. That wasn't God's heart. The key is, beloved, while you're in this transition mode, to realize that the covenant has to be stronger, more intense in you. You have to stand stronger than ever before. Because there are going to be people who would say, well, China, why do you still go to that church that doesn't have a building anymore? That's exactly the right answer. The right answer, because God put me there.
That's right.
I'm not here because of any other thing other than God put me there. When we get a hold of that, beloved, we won't have the people that leave one church to go to another. And it's not a competition within the pastors in the first place. Most churches will say, well, why are you here and not back where you were? And that's probably what I should have done with them right away. But they came in, he had read something I had written, and he said, I got to meet this guy, and all of a sudden they were at the church. But when you are in a wandering mode within your walk with God, you're not walking in covenant. So what you have here is such a powerfully anointed group of people because of covenant, because of what you've been taught, because of what you live. And when you stay in that stream, nothing can harm you. You could be here 10 years in this little bitty spot here. You're not going to be. But you could, I said you could be. Doesn't matter. What's happened is, though, you have to say, okay, Pastor Jack, what is your vision for the building we're going to have? And then you have to pray with him in agreement for that vision to come to reality. Because each step of the way, and I'm believing for you, I'm believing that then your next property will be debt-free with no payment per month, so you can do all the things that God's called you to do otherwise. That's what I'm believing. I believe that's going to happen to every spirit-filled covenant church out there. It happened to us, and we're not exceptions. And we do things today because we don't have a rent payment anymore. We don't have a house payment. We don't have a church payment. And I believe that's what's going to happen to you. And we're in covenant agreement with you as our church is with yours, so that you have the same thing happen to you. We love being here. Pastor, you owe me about 45 minutes for the next time I'm through. But Karen's going, he's going to get out early. That's good. Thank you very much. We love you guys. Stand strong. Stay strong. And watch what God's going to do with this body of believers.